Supreme Court of Appeal has reserved judgment in the former President Jacob Zuma's appeal for his early release on medical parole. The High Court had earlier found that Zuma's release on medical parole was unlawful after former Correctional Services boss Arthur Fraser released Zuma just 2 months into his 15-month sentence. The former president was sent to prison after he refused to appear before the State Capture Commission. Joining us to unpack the story is Advocate Paul Hoffman, Director at Accountability Now. Very good afternoon to you. Thank you for your time. The issue of terminal illness has essentially been the crux of the Jacob Zuma appeal case. As we've listened into the backs and forths as this matter has been underway, what questions does this matter begin to raise more aggressively?
I think that the essential issue in the appeal, which is an appeal against the success of the review of Arthur Fraser's decision to put former President Zuma on parole. That's what the legal situation is in as the court looks at it yesterday and reserves judgment until it has got its ducks in a row around the case. So the question really is, did Arthur Fraser have the power in law to allow Mr. Zuma to go home on medical parole? And that is answered in the negative if you look at the structure of the Act and the role of the Commissioner of Correctional Services in the type of application that was before the Medical Advisory Panel and before the Department of Correctional Services. So it seems likely to me that the Supreme Court of Appeal, certainly if one judges by the sharpness of the questions that were being asked during argument yesterday, is going to find against Mr. Zuma. But that is not the end of the matter. He has a further appeal to the Constitutional Court, which may or may not regard it as being in the interests of justice for him to have a further bite at the cherry to defend the decision of Mr. Fraser, a decision which saw him safely back at home 2 months into his 15-month sentence for contempt of the order of the Constitutional Court that he present himself to the Zondo Commission of Inquiry to give evidence, something that he eventually avoided doing by the time that commission reported.
Yeah. So as you speak about the nature of the questions, the sharpness of the questions, then it brings to mind other questions around where the loopholes could lie, especially when it comes to real substantial confirmation that the former president was indeed suffering from either a disease or a condition. Yes,
and the word or, that's O-R, not O-A-R, got more than its fair share of attention during the course of the argument, and it may be a valid criticism of the drafting of the legislation. But I think at the end of the day, it's very clear that it was a spectacular error, as counsel for the Helen Suzman Foundation put it. It was a spectacular error on Arthur Fraser's part to think that he, as a commissioner, could overrule the advice of the doctors who came to the conclusion that there is no terminal illness justifying medical parole. Medical parole is meant to be for people who go home to die. Mr. Zuma was in court yesterday, and he certainly did not appear, from the layman's point of view, to be suffering from any terminal illness. And where are we? A year down the line.
Can the court actually make a decision for the commissioner in this particular case, or is that now to be left for the commissioner to perhaps just reconsider?
No, it's likely in the because of the nature of the order in the initial review in the High Court, which simply said go back to jail. It's likely that the Constitutional Court will simply go along with that rather than bouncing the matter back. In a review case, you don't have to simply refer the matter back to the decision maker to make another decision. If it's very clear what's going on, then you simply substitute the court's decision for that of the administrative decision maker, in this case Arthur Fraser.
Very well. Thank you so much for that. Let's leave it there for now. Advocate Paul Hoffman, Director at Accountability Now, just weighing in on the reserved judgment in former President Jacob Zuma's appeal for his early release on medical parole.